I don't understand how anyone does this for a living. That was until I learned about one of the most useful woodworking hacks out there that makes even the most beginner woodworker look like a seasoned pro. No, it's not hand-cut dovetail joints or any other crazy joinery. There is one thing that even the most experienced woodworkers are afraid to make. So, let's build it, and thanks to Fiverr for sponsoring the video. In the world of furniture, there is one piece that every single one of you own. You're probably even using it right now, but it's hands down the most complicated thing you can possibly build. No, it's not an epoxy river table, tambour, a boat, or freehand carving. It's something that you wouldn't even think about because you use this piece of furniture multiple times every single day. When you encounter a bad one, you know it instantly, and when you encounter a great one, you also know it instantly. More on that in a bit, but for right now, let's dive into the project. Alright, so first thing here, you typically see me build everything out of expensive hardwoods like walnut, and while walnut makes awesome pieces of furniture, it's not readily available to everyone. I know there are a lot of people out there that want to build the projects I build here on my channel, which is why I've made PDF plans of every single project I've built available on my website. And that's also why I decided to ditch the walnut for this project and head to the big box store to grab something everyone has access to. These are cedar decking planks that only cost $12 a piece, which is probably, 1/8 the cost of walnut. Let's get these boards home. Back to what I was saying earlier. Did you figure out what the hardest piece of furniture to make is yet? I will give you a hint. It's generally the cheapest piece of furniture you can buy. It comes in tons of shapes and sizes. It can be made out of virtually any material. And I would bet a good sum of money that you're using one right now. No, it's not the toilet.
No, I'm in here!
I'm talking about chairs. Unlike a coffee table or dining table that just have to be generally the right size, if it's off a few inches either way, no one really cares. Chairs have to hit incredibly specific measurements. Sit in a chair where the backrest is too upright and you're instantly uncomfortable. Sit in a chair where the armrests are too low, again, instantly uncomfortable. Your body needs to fit perfectly in the chair and everything needs to be ergonomic or you will instantly know it's not right. Now, yes, you can absolutely study anthropometric tables and get the average size of various parts of the human anatomy, but I would rather use a simpler approach, an approach that we all use during our time in school, copying. I find a chair that is known to be comfortable, and then I work off of that as a base for my design. In 2020, I designed and built my very first chair. While the design looked cool, it really was far from a success. Now you're probably thinking, Eric, that probably snapped in half the instant anyone sat on it. No, it actually was rock solid. The issue was with the overall proportion of things. The armrests were too thin, the seat wasn't reclined enough, the back was too flat, and was overall not a good sitting experience. So 2 years later, in 2022, I tried my shot at making a dining chair. The basic proportions were again copied from a dining chair that I found comfortable. Now, I went out of my way to try a new technique to get a nice curved backrest. My wife even came out to help shape the seat to get it to contour my butt better. And while it was challenging to build and design, it was overall very comfortable. Now that it's another 2 years later, I want to dive back into chair making again, but this time push the limits a little bit more. I want to add more angles, more curves in the attempt to make it extremely relaxing and comfortable for an outdoor chair. I found several Adirondack chairs online, which, by the way, did you know is named after the Adirondack mountain range in New York where a lot of tuberculosis patients went for fresh mountain air, and the chair was claimed to have a bunch of health benefits? And did you also know that in Canada they call them Muskoka chairs because Muskoka is a popular cottage getaway area, and in France they call them Laurentian chairs after the popular Laurentian getaway region? Sure, I'm butchering that. So it looks like I am on the right path. Anyway, I found several chairs online to help me get the basic proportions, and then I jumped into my computer design software and started mocking things up. Now, I won't bore you with that whole process, but once I built and designed the chair in a digital world, I can simply print out the silhouette and turn those into physical pieces for me to build off of. Now, here's the catch. A lot of these pieces are going to be duplicates of one another, and because of that, I found that the easiest way to get these pieces to all be the same size is to use a process called templating. This may seem complicated, but it's actually incredibly easy and is one technique that will make even the most beginner woodworker look like a seasoned pro. What you've seen me do so far is take those printable templates that come with the plans for this project and attach them together. No need for a super large printer here, just overlay the alignment hash marks I put on the templates and you're good to go. After roughly cutting them out with a razor blade, I can glue them down to some 1/2 inch thick MDF. The whole reason for using MDF is that it's incredibly flat and super easy to cut and shape. That means less effort to get everything down to its perfect shape. When cutting the pieces out, I will use a jigsaw and take my time to make sure that I'm staying outside of the lines of the paper templates. I am not trying to get super close here because if I accidentally go over the line, well, I'd have to restart. The jigsaw absolutely works, but it's time consuming having to clamp, unclamp, and then reclamp the workpiece down to the workbench just to make the cut. And that's where the bandsaw comes in. It does the exact same thing as the jigsaw here, but it's significantly faster, not having to worry about clamps, and it also collects the dust way better, which is an added bonus. Again, notice that I'm not worrying about getting super close to the lines here. I'm trying to stay about an 1/8 or maybe a 1/16 of an inch away so that I can sneak up on the line to perfect things at a later step. And that later step is now. So to sneak up, I'm going to be using what might be one of the most disappointing tools I've ever purchased. This combination spindle and belt sander.
Oh, you suck!
I've had a handful of motors burn out on me. The spindle is nowhere close to being 90 degrees to the table, and the dust collection is an absolute joke. I have no idea why this thing is so popular in the woodworking community. But I've held onto it for tasks like refining templates because it's truly the easiest way. That's why making MDF templates is convenient though. Since it's so soft, even an incredibly underpowered sander like this hunk of junk can remove material with ease. While the spindle sander was able to take care of the curved sections of the template, I also need to establish perfectly straight and square edges on some of the template pieces. The easiest way to do that is with a track saw. This is one thing that I didn't realize before I actually owned a track saw. The beauty is that that plastic edge is exactly where the blade is going to cut. So I can just align the plastic edge to the cut line, and I know that that cut is going to be dead on accurate. Then to rip a parallel edge on the other side, I can run it through my table saw and then bring it over to the miter saw to get 90-degree cuts on the side. It's easy.
All right, so after all of that work, we finally got ourselves some nice, perfectly clean MDF templates. And yes, while it did seem like a huge pain and a big headache to make these, it's gonna make the rest of the project much easier. So let's take all these templates and start making some real sawdust.
I should mention this. Yes, if you had a CNC, you could absolutely have the CNC cut them out for you, which I should mention that the plans for this chair also come with the SVG file so that if you have a CNC, you can just make that guy do the work. Now, are we gonna make the chair out of MDF? Absolutely not. But those MDF templates set the stage to let me build 1 or even 500 of these chairs and ensure every single piece is exactly the same. With the templates finished, I can use them to trace the outline of individual shapes onto the cedar boards, and over at the miter saw, I can roughly cut the pieces out. I'm someone who will admit when they're wrong. In the past, I was vocal about how I thought miter saws were useless for people who primarily built furniture. My claim was that they took up way too much space, they weren't accurate, they created a boatload of dust, and require massive workstations to be useful. I propose that you should just use a table saw with a crosscut sled or miter gauge for these types of cuts. And while that does absolutely work, and works really well, having a dedicated miter saw station is super helpful, and now that I have one, I don't think I could ever go back. So to everyone out there who said I was crazy for not owning a miter saw, just like I tell my wife, you were right, I was wrong. Now it's all about roughing out the chair pieces even further. The jigsaw does this great, but notice how much slower it is to refine the shapes when it's on solid wood compared to the MDF from before. The jigsaw gets a ton of hate from people claiming that it's super inaccurate, so I want to give you my top tips. 1. There is a lever on the side that adjusts the orbital action, which is just a fancy word for saying how aggressive the cut is. Turn that all the way off. When going for precision, you want the blade perfectly up and down. 2, just like the blade on any other tool, change or clean them frequently. Jigsaw blades cost less than $1 a piece, so even if you throw it out at the end of every project, you will enjoy your jigsaw way more. 3, and by far the most important tip to getting flawless cuts with a jigsaw, do not push or force the saw into the wood. Use your hands to guide the saw and let the saw do all the work. Use your fingers to guide the saw to your line and just take your time. You will be shocked at how much better your jigsaw will cut and you won't hate it anymore. But when you're looking to really move through building chair parts faster, there is really no match for the bandsaw. You will notice that I'm still cutting outside the line both here with the bandsaw and before with the jigsaw. That is because I'm just trying to get these pieces close to their final shape, not hit the exact shape quite yet.
Whew, it's absolutely freezing out here. But as you can tell, the shape of all these pieces is pretty complex, so getting them to be the exact same shape is gonna be pretty challenging. But that is where these templates come into play. Because these templates are the exact shape that I'm looking for, I can just copy this shape onto here by doing this.
See how this template is just barely smaller than the actual workpiece? That is exactly what I'm going for. I grabbed some double-sided tape out of the tool chest and laid down a few pieces. This stuff was way stickier than you think, so a little goes a long way. Pro tip, use the razor blade to help pick up that pesky backing paper. Then you just press the two pieces together and you're good to go. In my trim router, I tossed in this 1/4-inch compression pattern bit and I can copy the shape of the template onto the workpiece with ease. The top bearing rides along the template and makes an exact copy of the template onto the cedar. Pretty cool, huh? Now, one huge tip I have for you here is that you do not want to use pattern bits that have straight cutters because those have a high likelihood of blowing out the wood fibers. Instead, spring for one of these spiral configuration router bits that will give you significantly cleaner cuts and last way longer too. You won't find these locally in stores, but I've got a link in the description where I get mine, as well as a coupon code for you to save some money on them. See how even the end grain is perfectly smooth? I told you these bits are good. Just pop a putty knife in between the two pieces and carefully pry off the template, and you've got yourself a perfect copy of the template. Pretty cool, huh?
Now, using a small trim router like this absolutely works. As you can tell, this piece looks perfect, but it makes a huge mess. So let me show you an alternative method that is much, much cleaner.
Many routers on the market have dust collection ports that suck up virtually all of the dust. Combine that with one of these black cones surrounding the router bit, and you can see virtually no dust is able to escape. And want to know why you don't see these in more YouTube videos though? Because it makes really boring camera shots. Seeing dust fly around is much more satisfying since as a viewer, you don't have to clean anything up.
So you can see that that method does the exact same result, but is substantially cleaner. But I have one third way that I think is really the best option.
And that's the router table. The only difference is that instead of bringing the tool to the workpiece, like I did with the jigsaw, I am bringing the workpiece to the tool, like what I did on the bandsaw. This makes it so I don't need any clamps to hold things steady and can duplicate these pieces significantly faster. One thing that I really need to focus on is creating a solution for better dust collection here. You can see that a lot of the dust gets sucked down below the table, but I need a solution for collecting it up on top. If you have any suggestions, please leave them down in the comment section for me to check out. This technique of template routing is limitless. It's how I made the shape of this chair, and this chair, and the legs for this desk, and the base for this end table, this custom wine rack, and tons of other projects. Incorporate this technique into the things you are building, and you can level up your skills and building ability overnight.
We also got to remember to template route this little guy here. I definitely forgot.
I want to show you another pro tip for doing this process that works if you have a bandsaw. I've got this jig that magnetically attaches to my saw with a plastic guide arm that wraps around the blade. This allows me to push the template into the guide arm so I never have to worry about cutting too far, and I get like a 1/16 of an inch surrounding my template. Then, back at the router table, I can flush things up. While there are always tons of ways to accomplish the task with basic tools, it's fun to explore ways to do it faster and more efficiently, but you definitely don't have to.
So now I've got these side supports done, let's turn our attention to cutting down the legs.
A whole reason I like to show you multiple ways to accomplish the same task is because I want woodworking to be as approachable as possible. It would be easy to use super complicated words to try to confuse you and make you think that I'm smarter than I actually am in an attempt to make myself seem superior to you and do something that the kids like to call gatekeep, like my college chemistry professor. But at the same time, on the opposite end of the spectrum, it would also be really easy to oversimplify this whole project and say something like, yeah, you just cut the pieces to size, glue them together, and you got yourself a chair.
All right, now for the back legs, we could do a little bit more of the same. However, I want to try something different, a new technique, so let's check this out.
But neither of those are beneficial for you, the viewer, because in one, you walk away thinking woodworking is impossible, and in the other, well, the video would be like 5 seconds long. Exploring new techniques is something that gets me more interested in projects and challenges me to think differently. What if I refused to use a router table and instead thought the trim router was superior? What if I refused to try out a miter saw and thought the table saw was better in every single case? That's a recipe for staying stagnant in your skills, which is why I'm trying something new that I've seen several of my woodworking YouTube friends use in their videos as well. I first need to rip off the rounded edge from the cedar board, and then I can take a look at the plans, which are available linked in the description below, and figure out exactly where I need these back pieces to be angled. This is nothing new here yet, but I can transfer those marks and then cut the small angles on the end over on the miter saw.
So now that I've got that top angle cut here, typically what I would do next to cut this long taper is whip up some sort of tapering jig, or maybe buy an expensive tapering jig to run through on the table saw. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with either of those methods, but what really interests me is trying out new techniques and just learning something different, so I'm gonna try this one here.
I'm building something called an L fence, which I have to admit is not my original idea. I can't come up with all these ideas on my own, so I rely on talented individuals for idea generation. And I have another confession. Remember how I said I modeled this entire chair on the computer before building it? Yeah, that's a lie. This design was so complicated to model that I decided to reach out to someone with much better 3D design and production skills than I have. Meet Nicholas. Nicholas is an industrial designer with experience in the furniture and consumer electronics industry who I found on Fiverr. Fiverr connects people like you and me with freelancers that can offer a massive selection of digital services like furniture design, 3D modeling, video editing, and interior design, just to name a few. In fact, I actually sent Nicholas photos of Adirondack chairs that I liked and asked him to design a slightly different take for me to create in this video. Fiverr even has freelancer consultation service that connects you with one-on-one consultations, which is a great alternative to off-the-shelf purchases or communicating with freelancers through messages. Fiverr makes the process of finding a high-quality freelancer, like Nicholas, incredibly easy. User reviews, portfolios of past projects, and even lists of previous clients allow you to find the perfect match. Nicholas provided me with high-quality renderings of this piece of furniture and a Fusion 360 3D model, which in turn allowed me to fully conceptualize all the specific cuts and measurements I needed to make in order for all of this to work out, which made building this chair significantly easier. And from that, I was able to make a fully detailed set of plans that contain every single measurement, printable templates, SVG files for your CNC, and everything else you need to build this chair for yourself. Without Nicholas's help, I truly don't think I would have been able to figure out all of the complex intricacies of these compounded angles, and this video may have never seen the light of day. Huge shout out to Nicholas for helping out, and head to fiverr.co/Spencley to check out the services available to you and get 10% off your first order using code Spencley10. Now, with all of the pieces cut, I want to start assembling the chair, but first I need to sand the pieces. The pro of using cedar is that it is naturally rot resistant, so it'll stand up to the elements outside. The downside is it is incredibly soft, so it scratches and dents really easily. But another pro is that since it's so soft, sanding goes really fast. This workbench that I built a few videos back,
Thank God that is over.
has been working out great. I love how versatile all these dog holes are, and the anti-slip pads work great. I'll pop a link in the description for you to check out these and all the other tools that I'm using in the video today.
Whew, everybody enjoys a good sanding session, right? So I've got all these pieces sanded down, and you're probably thinking, great, now we're gonna finally assemble the sides of the chair. Well, no, not quite yet. There's one last final thing I wanna do before we start assembling the sides of the chairs, so let's head over to the router table.
Remember how earlier I talked about making sure the chair is comfortable? One of the best ways to do that is by softening all of the edges of all of the pieces. This is super easy to do with some sandpaper since cedar is so soft, but it can be done faster and more efficiently over on the router table. These are the small details that will really elevate your builds, but enough of that. I'm gonna get this thing assembled.
All right, so now that all the roundovers are put on these edges, we can finally start putting this chair together.
All right, let's talk brass tacks. Well, maybe stainless steel tacks is more of an appropriate term. This chair is going to spend all of its time outside. Hot, cold, rain, snow, hurricane. Well, probably not a hurricane in Ohio unless there's some sort of cataclysmic event, but let's not go down that tangent. Since this chair will spend so much time outside, the wood is going to move, expand and contract throughout all the seasonal temperature and moisture changes. Because of that, I am not going to spend days working on perfect mortise and tenon joinery, and I'm not going to cheat by using dominoes. No, I'm simply going to glue and screw this chair together. With the armrest attached to the back leg and the support brace attached to the front leg, I can bring it all together with the larger seat bracket. It may look like I'm haphazardly throwing all the pieces together, but all of the specific dimensions that you need are listed in those plans, so your chair or chairs turn out exactly like mine. If you've been watching this channel for a while, you know that I work out of an apartment garage. I have been for about 4 or so years now. I've got a secret to let you in on. This workshop and everything in it is going away soon. Now, this is not some sort of mic drop moment in the middle of a video where I tell you that I'm quitting YouTube. Far from it. But I've got something really big and really exciting that I'm going to share with all of you in the near future. Now, I'm the person who never likes surprises, but also hate when someone ruins the ending.
No, God!
One thing I did love as a kid were those choose your own adventure books, though. I have to be honest and tell you that I often cheated. I would flip ahead and see how the story would pan out and then revise my choice. But I've got a choose your own adventure here for you. Door 1, you do nothing. You enjoy the rest of the video and wait to see what happens. A perfectly valid choice. Behind door 2, though, is an option that I know most people will be tempted by. Is it better? That's up for you to decide. But I will tell you this. If you want to know exactly what is coming up in the future, get free merch, watch all of my videos before they release to the public, and check out tons of behind-the-scenes videos each week, consider opening door 2 by joining my Patreon community. Those supporters already know the big news and are a sounding board for things to come in the future. I really enjoy posting several videos a week over there where I talk about woodworking as a business, talk about projects I'm working on.
Ounces of it to cover this thing, and then I started noticing a bunch of smoke. And that's because there was so much.
Talk tools that I have, and give long video responses to community members' questions, something that simply isn't possible here on YouTube. So if door 2 seems interesting, consider checking out the Patreon link in the description below, or if door 1 is more your speed, just make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on the update in the near future.
All right, so now that we've got both of the sides of the chairs all situated, we can start working on the parts that are going to draw those two pieces together.
Although this is only my 3rd chair I've ever made, I've noticed they are way different than a lot of other furniture pieces. Not only do the measurements, like I mentioned earlier, have to be super specific to fit the complex shape of the human body, but they also aren't something that you can really work around. What I mean by that is, say you are working on a coffee table. If you mess up and cut the top 1 inch too short, not an issue. Just make the base a little bit smaller and no one's ever going to notice. With chairs though, if I got the legs 1 inch shorter, now all of my weight will be shifted into the back of the chair. My legs will no longer be supported and it instantly feels awkward. Chasing after all the precision required in this chair is fun, but I always find myself daydreaming towards the end of projects. I will constantly be 75% of the way through a project and start thinking about my next challenge, but more on that in a second. What I am working on here are the upper and lower back support pieces. I made templates for them earlier, which allows me to rough cut the boards into more manageable pieces just like before. These pieces also need to be template routed, and I find that while the bandsaw jig that I showed you earlier is pretty new to me, it's quickly becoming my favorite way to speed up the process because I don't have to focus super closely. The plastic piece ensures that I don't cut too far. Now, one of the things that keeps me entertained in the shop is listening to music. Unfortunately, if I listen to music, I can't then protect my ears from all the loud tool noises. Well, that is solved by picking up Bluetooth hearing protection like the ones I've been wearing for years now. There's even an exclusive coupon code for you down in the description. You get all the hearing protection you need, but they also connect to your phone through Bluetooth so you can listen to all your favorite songs, audiobooks, or my podcast Off the Cut that I do every single week. We discuss what we are working on every week and interview all of your favorite YouTube woodworkers so that you've got some good company while you're building projects in the shop. Check it out on all your favorite streaming platforms. People often ask me what I listen to in the shop while I'm working or filming these videos. You might think it's classics like Led Zeppelin, Creedence Clearwater Revival, Celine Dion. Nope, none of those. You know what I listen to a lot?
Are you ready for it?
I am not afraid to admit it, but I listen to Taylor Swift all the time. Even made my wife go to her shows with me. I mean, if people can like Bruce Springsteen, then there's nothing wrong with listening to Taylor Swift, right?
So of course, now we gotta flush trim these pieces. And I typically do this with these spiral bits. They work super well. Only problem is they're very expensive. And because of that, I'm gonna try out a new bit today that I just got sent from my buddy Jonathan Katz-Moses, and it's supposed to be just as good, but it is a fraction of the price. So let's check it out.
I'm all for a good deal, but when Jonathan told me about this router bit, I was skeptical at first. It's about 1/4 the price of the spiral bits I know and love, but I know that these are out of the reach of a lot of hobbyists. So here's my honest review. If the spiral bits were a Ferrari and the straight bits were a 1989 LeBaron convertible that used to be owned by John Voight, I'd call this bit a very dependable, high trim level Toyota Camry. Better than most cars people own, but it's not going to blow your mind by any means. I think you'll like it.
So I gotta say, this router bit kind of surprised me. It is a fraction of the price, and it still did a phenomenal job flush trimming this with no tear out. But let's get back to building the chair.
All right, now that we've got those side assemblies all situated as well as the back braces, I can start combining everything to really build out the chair. Since I work alone and haven't grown multiple arms, I like to fabricobble, which by the way is an excellent word you should try to throw in your life more often. I fabricobbled the system where I clamp a clamp onto the leg and then clamp the clamp onto my workbench. Pretty clever, huh? Now on the side assemblies, there's a convenient cutout where I can throw some more glue in and get the support brace put in.
What the heck? I put it on the wrong side. That's all right, we can fix it.
This kind of thing happens more than you would expect, but it's not a big deal. Now, you want to know something else I didn't see coming? I need to put screws in these pieces, but I can't get my drill into that tight space. The cool thing is that a lot of drills have these right angle attachments that come with them, or you can buy one like this on the aftermarket that allows you to get into tight spots like this. By far one of the things that everyone needs to have at their disposal, and they're cheap too. There's a link below. Now I can easily pre-drill, countersink, and then drive screws in to secure these pieces. One thing that I failed to mention is that cedar has a tendency to tear out during cuts and during drilling. That's something that does make it frustrating to work with compared to normal hardwoods that I typically work with, like walnut. So just take your time here, don't rush things, and you should be alright. With the upper and lower back supports attached to tie the side assemblies together, now I can shift my focus towards making the back slats. Here's something that I get a lot of questions about, and that's my miter saw technique. People often ask why I take multiple passes. No, it's not because the saw is underpowered, it's a safety precaution. When cutting down boards like this, while not super common, you do run the chance that the board has a lot of built-up tension in it, and it will bind and grab to the blade. This would cause some nasty kickback, which is super scary. Now, that typically only happens with rough sawn lumber, but you can never be too careful. Plus, it leaves you with a cleaner cut too. This is something that you can't normally say, but since these boards from the home center are actually straight, I can run both sides through a table saw to get some clean and crisp edges to get the backrest slats ready to go.
So now I've got all those back slats cut down, and I could absolutely use these on the chair, but the tops of these are a little boring. They're square. So what I want to do is change that up a little bit, add a little shape, a little pizzazz, a little snazz to it, and give my own kind of creative touch to the chair. And I'm thinking that since the rest of the chair has some kind of rounded edges and parts to it, let's try that style.
This type of chair really lends itself well to customization. You can shape these back slats however you want to get a custom look, but here's one tip I want to share to help you out. If you clamp two pieces together, you can make the rough cut and then sand them together. Not only will this make sure the sander stays square with the edges, but it will also make sure that the pieces are identical. Perfect example of working smarter, not harder.
And just like that, we've got the nice curves put on the top of these slats, would definitely make them look way better. But I'm not quite ready to attach these to the chair. I got one more final detail I need to do to really make things look nice.
While I get all the edges rounded over on these back slats, I have a question to ask you. As part of the big news that I alluded to earlier, remember door 2 is still an option if you want to join in on the Patreon community link below, but I want to do something for all of you, the viewers, who make all this possible. I'm working on organizing a big giveaway, and I want to know what sort of things you would like me to try to include in the giveaway. Do you want large tools like a table saw? Or do you want me to do tons of smaller items like router bits, measuring tools, and stuff like that? I can't guarantee that I will be able to fulfill everyone's requests, but if you made it this far in the video, I truly appreciate it and I hope that you're enjoying what you're watching. Start your comment off with the word pineapple, and then write what you would like me to include in the giveaway. It's probably going to take me some time to organize it all, but I really want to hear back from you about what you would like to see in that giveaway. Here's what I mean about cedar being finicky to work with. I'm not going to try to hide it or pretend like it didn't happen, but there is a small amount of tear out around the screw holes. Not the end of the world, but it is one of the reasons that I typically don't love working with softwoods like this. You look at it the wrong way, pieces dent, split, or tear out. But since cedar is so affordable, it is a great choice for trying something new like getting into chair building.
So now with all of the back slats done, we can turn our attention to the last detail on the chair, which, as you can probably guess, are going to be the seat slats. Seat slats. There we go. Let's knock those out.
These seat slats are the final thing that's going to tie the chair together, and after all the template routing that I had to do earlier, it certainly is a nice change of pace to make some straight cuts now. Now I know I'm going to get a ton of questions about finishing the chair like this that will spend all of its time outdoors. You basically have two choices: a film finish like spar urethane, epoxy, varnish, polyurethane, or paint, or an oil finish like tung oil, mineral oil, or whatever other oil you might want to use. At first, a film finish might seem like an obvious choice since in general they offer more protection to the elements. Only problem is that the sun is undefeated and eventually the film will break down and flake off. The only way to repair a film finish is to sand the entire thing down and reapply the finish. So that leaves us with oil. An oil finish won't offer as much protection, but the advantage is not having to sand down the entire project before applying more oil. Just throw some oil on top of what is already there, and you're good to go. Seems like an obvious decision, right? I'm going to pick to finish it with oil. No, I'm not going to do either of those. I'm actually not going to do anything at all to protect this chair outside. Like I mentioned earlier, cedar is naturally rot resistant, so it will do fine on its own outdoors. And if you're anything like me, and I'm sure you are, you tell yourself, oh yeah, of course I will go out every year and refinish these chairs. But just like those lawnmower blades that you're supposed to sharpen several times a year, you and I both know that they haven't been sharpened since the day you bought that mower. Stop lying to yourself. You aren't actually going to refinish your outdoor furniture. So save yourself time and money and just let it naturally gray over time. Like your hair that you definitely have never dyed, right? Now that all the seat slats are prepped, I can start attaching them to the side assembly. This is the fun part because after all of your hard work, you can very quickly start to see the chair come together into its final form and realize that while chairs are more demanding than a lot of other furniture pieces, with a little bit of planning, some careful forethought, copying the base structure of something you already know works and is comfortable, you can build out a custom chair no problem. Pushing myself to build yet another chair makes me think of a table that I ruined a few years back. Maybe it's time to give that project another try.
And just like that, you've got yourself a perfect adirondack chair. But I gotta make about 6 more of these, so I'll see you on the next one.
Thanks so much for watching, and thanks again to Fiverr for sponsoring today's video. Be sure to check out fiverr.co/Spencley and check out the services available to you and get 10% off your first order using code SPENCLEY10.